Good afternoon. Welcome to Communities Foundation of Texas. My name is Monica Eggert-Smith, and I'm the Chief Relationship Officer here at the Foundation. And on behalf of Dave Scullin, our CEO, and all of our staff, we are so thrilled that you are here in our building. I'm curious, just by a quick show of hands, for how many of you is this the first time that you've been here at CFT? Wow, that's great. Well, a special welcome to all of you. We really are thrilled that you are here, as well as our many old friends who have been here many, many times before. At CFT, our mission is to grow philanthropy in North Texas to help create thriving communities for all. We do that by working with individuals, families, companies, and nonprofit organizations to make giving easy, effective, and enjoyable. Each year, roughly $100 million flows out of this building in the form of grants to support a wide variety of causes, everything from education and social services to animals and the arts. And a big portion of that money stays right here in the Dallas area. Now, CFT is probably best known for North Texas Giving Day, the annual community-wide celebration of giving where everyone has the opportunity to be a philanthropist and support the nonprofit organizations and causes that you care most about. This year, the big day is September 19th. It's very easy to remember, 9/19/19. And we hope that you will mark your calendar and encourage your favorite nonprofit organizations, as well as your friends and family and colleagues to participate in this big day. You may have heard just yesterday, we made the announcement that Dirk and Jessica Nowitzki are our honorary chairs this year for Giving Day. So we are super excited and hope to break that $48 million record that we set in 18 hours last year. Now, in addition to boosting philanthropy in our community, one of our most important roles is to serve as a convener for important, timely conversations like today's forum. We are honored to partner with the North Dallas Chamber and the many other community organizations that are part of today's event, and we look forward to today's conversation with Representative Johnson and Councilmember Griggs. Our city is facing an important inflection point, and so I encourage you to listen carefully, ask tough questions, and regardless of who you decide to support when you leave today, please vote. It is critical that everyone's voice be heard as we select our city's next leader. Again, welcome to CFT. We are glad you're here, and with that, I will turn things over to the CEO of the North Dallas Chamber, the terrific Ken Malcolmson.
Well, thank you to Monica and Communities Foundation of Texas for hosting us today. Can there be a better venue for a forum like this? This is spectacular. So thank you, Monica. We really appreciate it. We'd also like to acknowledge all of our co-hosts for today's forum. They're up on the screen. I'm not going to name them all, but I also want to acknowledge the fact that this is a great example of collaboration and efficiency in the community space. It's something that we've been trying to work on for some time, is how can we come together and be more efficient and amplify our voices, and we saw this as a great example of that. So thank you to all of our partners today that are identified on the screen. And finally, please allow me to introduce all of our elected officials, and there are many of them who are present today. So I'm just going to acknowledge them, and please wave. We don't need to go through a long process here, but we simply want you to wave when your name is called. So let me start with State Senator Nathan Johnson. Dallas City Council member Jennifer Gates. No need to applause, please. We got to get through a bunch of names here. City Council member, Dallas City Council member Sandy Grayson. Dallas City Council member Adam McGue. I don't think I saw Adam. And Dallas City Council member elect Chad West. Dallas County Commissioner J.J. Koch. Dallas County Community College District Trustee Phil Ritter, Richardson Independent School District Trustee Justin Bono, Richardson Independent School District Trustee Jean Bono, Richardson Independent School District Trustee Kim Kasten, I don't think I saw Kim, Richardson Independent School District Trustee Kristen Kuhn, City of Capel Mayor Karen Hunt, and Farmers Branch City Council member Crystal Ratana. And finally, I'm real pleased and privileged to introduce two of our former mayors who I know one of them is here for sure, and that's Tom Leppert. Mayor Leppert, where are you? We saw him earlier. Okay. And then we also were expecting to see, and we were so pleased, but unfortunately I think she's had an illness come up, but we were expecting to see Adeline Harrison, former Mayor Adeline Harrison, but unfortunately I think she's not able to be here today. So now I'd really like to, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's event. Creighton Webb is well known throughout our community and is ideally suited for this role today. He's a former investigative reporter for CBS 11. He is formerly a chief of staff in the mayor's office. He spent 12 years at Mary Kay in government relations and corporate communications. And today, Creighton is the owner and CEO of SunWest Communications, a 35-year-old public relations and public affairs firm. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Creighton Webb.
Thank you all so much for having me today. I think it'd be a little bit easier if we asked everybody who's not an elected official to stand up. I also saw former acting mayor Mary Poss in the audience. Mary, thank you for your service. So you've heard already, we're not going to do any applause today, a few ground rules to begin with. So we know you have your favorite candidate perhaps already, but we ask for no applause. I want to make sure that you all know that Richland Student Media is not only live streaming today's event, but they're also recording it. So if you're, you can applaud for them, that's fantastic. The really good news is that if you're a millennial, it means that you can look at your phone the whole time while it's happening live up here. You don't even have to watch it here. Before I introduce our candidates, let me tell you a little bit about the ground rules. There's already been a coin toss. Councilmember Griggs won the coin toss, which means that he will begin with a 90-second opening comment, followed by Representative Johnson, who will have the same 90 seconds for his opening remarks. From there, we'll go into the Q&A section of this forum, if you will. So we'll start with Mr. Johnson. He'll have 90 seconds to answer a question that is directed by me. Mr. Griggs will then have 90 seconds, and then Mr. Johnson will go back and have 30 seconds for a rebuttal. And we'll go back and forth like that, ensuring that each candidate has equal time and alternating back and forth as to who begins. From there, just to mix it up a little bit and to keep things interesting, depending on how things are going and how your mood is, whether you're throwing things or not or falling asleep, we may go into a speed round where we'll ask questions, a series of very quick questions, and they'll have 10 seconds in order to answer each of those questions. After that, we'll go back to the Q&A. I'll ask some of the candidates individualized questions that are personalized just for them. Again, they'll have only 90 seconds to respond. And then, of course, we'll open it up to the audience for your individual questions. Mr. Jeff Kittner here with the North Dallas Chamber will be collecting your cards. Now, here's our request. We would ask that you ensure that your questions are directed to both candidates. In order for us to read them, they have to be addressed to both candidates. While we finish up our housekeeping, let's bring up our two candidates. Please help me welcome to the stage Representative Eric Johnson and Councilmember Scott Griggs. So candidates, we put you in chairs like this because we want you to feel very relaxed and very open. We want you to get away from your stump speeches and tell us what is really on your mind, what your mind is, and what you really think. We want to let you know that media is here, so we know that you want to be on your best behavior. Actually, that's directed to the audience. But we hope that you will be candid and open and tell us what's really on your mind. Again, I want to reiterate, we want to ask all of our audience members to hold your applause. And I also want to tell you, with the exception of members of the media, there is no recording, whether it's audio or video. We'd ask that you would leave that to Richland Student Media, who we already mentioned. For those of you who don't know, the mayor is the highest elected official in the city of Dallas, but we are in what's called a 14-1 form of government with a city manager who acts as our city's CEO. The mayor essentially acts as the chairman or chairperson of the board and has one vote, just like all 14 of his or her individual council colleagues. Those 14, unlike the mayor, are elected by individual council districts. The mayor is the only citywide elected official elected at large. Their only power, however, according to our city charter, is to act as chairman of the body, known as the Dallas City Council, to appoint their colleagues as chairpeople of the council committees, and of course, the bully pulpit. It is an extremely important job, and the stakes are very high as we come to our election day. In fact, early voting started already this week, and election day, of course, is a week from Saturday on June 8th. So with that, let me ask our candidates to make their opening remarks. Our timekeeper is right here in front. Again, Mr. Griggs won the coin toss. We'll begin with you with your 90-second opening remarks.
Well, good afternoon. How are you all doing? If it's all right, I'll just go ahead and sit because the cameras are set for us to sit rather than standing and walking around. My name is Scott Griggs, and I'm running to be the next mayor of the city of Dallas. I'm a lifelong Dallasite. I grew up in North Dallas, went off to school at Texas A&M, where I got a degree in chemistry, then to the University of Texas, where I got a degree in law. I was so fortunate, I convinced my girlfriend at the time, who became my fiance and then my wife, to move back to Dallas. I lived in Uptown, she lived in East Dallas. 17 years ago, we got married, and we moved to Oak Cliff, where we have 3 children who are 5, 3, and 1. And many of you already know this. We've got 1 dog, 3 cats, and 7 chickens. So it's absolutely a house full of life. And for the last 8 years, I've had the privilege and honor of serving on the Dallas City Council. And that's given me an opportunity to work with so many people throughout the city. And what I know is that together there's not a problem we can't solve, a challenge we can't meet, an opportunity we can't seize. I have more faith than ever in the people of the city of Dallas, and that's why I'm running to be your next mayor. And I recognize that our shared values are going to make this city better. We need to focus on transparency and accountability in government, safe, strong neighborhoods, and a renewed emphasis on the essentials, taking care of our streets, our parks, our rec centers. That's what I intend to do as your mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson.
The no applause thing threw me off. I'm sorry, I was waiting for the applause. But my name is Eric Johnson, and I'm also running for mayor, and I'm currently a state representative. I've been the state representative for District 100 for the past 10 years, where I've had the honor and the privilege of representing Dallas, the heart of Dallas, in our state legislature. I was born and raised here. I grew up in West Dallas, and then our family moved to Oak Cliff when I was in junior high, and my family still lives in Oak Cliff predominantly, although we still have some family still in West Dallas. But my story is firmly rooted in this city. My grandparents moved to Dallas from East Texas, a town called Marshall, Texas, in 1946, right after World War II ended. My grandfather was honorably discharged and moved my grandmother and their 1 child at the time, my uncle, to Dallas, and our family's been here ever since. I was given an incredible opportunity early in life to attend Green Hill School on a scholarship through the West Dallas Boys and Girls Club, where I attended for 11 years before going off to college at Harvard and then Princeton for a graduate degree in public affairs and then a law degree from the University of Pennsylvania. Returned to Dallas and started my law practice in public finance, where I've represented the city of Dallas as a public finance attorney for the past 15 years. Intimately familiar with the city's finances. Got married to someone I've known since I was a kid, who I met at Green Hill on the bus that I rode to school every day. We have 2 young children, a 5-year-old named William and a 1-year-old named George. They're amazing boys. And my 5-year-old is a student at DISD schools. And I'm running for mayor because I want to make sure that every child in this city has the incredible opportunities to achieve their full potential like I did, and we can talk about what that means. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. All right, we're going to start the Q&A, and again, we're going to stick real strict with the time limits, just out of courtesy to the audience and to make sure we can get as many questions in as possible. So 90 seconds each, with a 30-second rebuttal to the first respondent. First question goes to Mr. Johnson. What makes you the better choice for mayor compared to your opponent? In short, why will we be better off with you in the mayor's chair?
I think I'm the better choice for mayor because of our particular form of government. The council manager form of government requires a mayor who is able to work within a structure where there's very limited statutory power. If we had a system where whoever was able to get themselves elected mayor could pretty much do whatever they wanted, like we can in Chicago and New York and some other strong mayor systems, the political abilities, the leadership abilities, the consensus building abilities of the mayor wouldn't matter as much. But in our system, those qualities are paramount. A mayor of Dallas, to be successful, has to be someone who has a demonstrated ability to work well with other people, to bring people together who come from different points of view, different parts of our city, different political persuasions, and I've demonstrated over 10 years in the legislature that I'm exactly that kind of leader, which I believe is reflected in the support I've had for this campaign. My opponent has made issue at times of the broad base of support that I have and has tried to portray that as a negative thing. But in fact, I am proud of all of the support I have. I don't run away from the fact that I'm supported by neighborhood associations and people who would be considered community activists and people who are on the ground in our communities, and all the way across the spectrum politically and economically to our business leaders, people of both parties. It doesn't matter. People who want strong leadership in the mayor's office, who want people who can bring people together and bring out the best in people, who will work with our existing city council, the majority of whom has actually endorsed me in this race. That's what people are looking for, and that's the basis of support that I have in this race.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Griggs.
Yes, I understand how City Hall works inside and out. And I have a huge list of endorsements also from all the way from a former Secretary of State of the state of Texas, former congressman, all the way down to current council members, former council members, DISD trustees, and former DISD trustees. Because people recognize, based on my record, everything that I've gotten done over the last 8 years. I'm not only a consensus builder, I'm a leader and a team player, and that shows on the votes that I've taken and the issues I've led over the last 8 years. And I know on day one what we need to do. We need to take care of public safety in this city. We are experiencing a public safety crisis, and I intend on addressing that. I'm also ready on day one to take care of transportation in the city of Dallas, focus on housing, continuing the implementation of the comprehensive housing policy, and then work on these big issues that we need to do about growing southern Dallas and bringing more jobs and increasing the tax base. I'm ready on day one to handle all these issues, and that's why I'm ready to be the next mayor of the city of Dallas.
30-second rebuttal to Mr. Johnson.
I want to be very clear that I don't bring up the list of endorsements I have to brag or just to run off a list of names. The issue is who is going to be able to work best with the current council. And by current council, I mean the people who are going to be sworn in on the same day as the new mayor and have to get to work immediately. I think it's just a fact that the majority of the council has said publicly that they believe that I will be a better person to be able to overcome pre-existing divisions that have been caused by a whole manner of reasons that we just don't even need to deal with anymore. I'm coming from a different perspective, and I think that's an important thing for Dallas.
All right, gentlemen, in your answers, we heard transportation, we heard housing, we heard public safety, so let's get to it and dig into some of these specific issues, and let's start with affordable housing. So the city has adopted, as you know, a comprehensive housing policy citing the need for 20,000 new affordable housing units at a cost of about $1.5 billion over the next 3 years. What would you do specifically for creating and maintaining affordable housing for families and city workers? And in addition to that, would you support or be in favor of a citywide bond election to fund the objectives of the policy that you line out? Mr. Griggs, we'll start with you with 90 seconds.
Yes, thank you. When I arrived, I support the comprehensive housing policy and implementing it very quickly. When I arrived to the Dallas City Council in 2011, we didn't have a housing policy. In 2015, I got to be chair of the housing committee for 2 years. I said, this city is going to enter a housing crisis, and we need a policy to address it. So I helped being a leader and working on a team preparing the comprehensive housing policy at the city of Dallas. And what we did, we used a data-driven approach called a market value analysis to identify we need 20,000 units. Then we identified from across the country the best programs, tools, and strategies to bring that about. Some of the tools that we need to use are, for example, inclusive zoning that's in there. When developers come to downtown and uptown and want a little bit more density, a little bit more height, we'll give it to them as the city of Dallas, but in exchange, some units have to be set aside as affordable. We have other tools called neighborhood empowerment zones that can help parts of town where we're seeing gentrification and rapid tax rate increases and rapid increases in taxation pushing people out. In those areas, we can freeze the taxes to help. Also, in other neighborhoods, we're far too long where the city of Dallas has come in and used just code compliance as a hammer. Instead, we have a program to help people fix their homes up instead of just writing code complaint after code complaint. That's another innovative program. Another one we have is second soft mortgages to help first responders and others move to the city of Dallas. We've got the best programs, tools, and strategies from across the country, and as mayor on day one, I'm ready to implement them to help with this affordable housing crisis in the city of Dallas.
Mr. Johnson.
So the issue of affordable housing is one that's very near and dear to me, and it's not a theoretical matter for me. I grew up the way we would describe when I was growing up as poor, but today we would call housing insecure. I actually had to calculate and think about, for the first time ever, when I announced I was running for mayor, I had to think about all the different places that I've lived growing up here, and I calculated that I've actually lived at 9 different addresses by the time I turned 18 years old. So on average, I'd moved every 2 years to a new apartment or a new rental house. So I understand the need in the city to have places where folks who are on the lower end of the income spectrum can live. I support the idea of expanding affordable housing through various tools that we have available to us, including the issuing of a bond. If the voters will support that idea, and that's something we'd have to take to the voters, then I would support issuing a bond to build more affordable housing, to answer your question specifically. But I also believe that even if we didn't issue a bond, there are tools that are available to us that we need to take advantage of, inclusionary zoning being one of them, but also funding an affordable housing trust fund to a greater degree, and making sure that we are not losing housing stock, affordable housing stock, at a greater rate than we're building it. So very much like the police and fire situation, you have a bucket that has a hole in the bottom of it, and you're trying to put more housing into it, but you're losing housing all the time through gentrification. So we have to make sure that we stabilize neighborhoods that are actually losing affordable housing through gentrification, and that's a priority of mine. I've written extensively about that, actually.
Mr. Griggs, rebuttal?
Yes. In the housing policy, the goals we're going to accomplish is to maintain and increase the stock of affordable housing, provide more choice on where people live, and we're identifying the neighborhoods in the city of Dallas that have been neglected too long by the city in terms of sidewalks, access to a park 10 minutes away in walking distance, and those other items. That's what we're going to address in the housing policy. And I do support the issuance of further bond funds to help with the housing, just like we did in 2017. We issued bond money, or the voters approved it, for housing, and particularly there for issues helping people experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
So let's stay on that and dig a little bit deeper, right? This is a complicated issue and there's a lot to it. You mentioned gentrification, but yet you both have also talked about on the campaign trail economic development in the right way. So how do you balance your interest in economic development with the displacement of homeowners' gentrification? What's your view on that? And we'll begin with Mr. Johnson.
Okay, thank you. So it is a complex question, but it's a great question. It's an important topic. It's a nuanced deal where you have to look at every case separately. Not every case of rapid development in our community presents a gentrification or displacement threat to the existing communities. So if you look at an area like my district has almost every example in recent history in our city to look at, so it's kind of cool when you think about what's going on in the Design District or the Cedars, and compare that to what is potentially going on in places like West Dallas and the 10th Street Historic District. The difference is in certain of these areas, you're talking about taking areas where there weren't very many residences to begin with. It was pretty much a commercial area with industrial uses that is being converted to residential. But in areas like West Dallas, where you do have high numbers of residential, that's when you have to be very sensitive to the impact that development is having on the property taxes of the people who live in those areas, because the rapid increase in property taxes is what creates that pressure that forces some people out of their homes through the fact that they can't afford to keep up with their tax payments, and they become more prone to accepting some developers' offer to buy at maybe a lower price than they probably should. And then next thing you know, you're starting to see houses being scraped and very expensive condos or things put up in their place. So one of the key things we have to do, and actually we've talked about this before and we've written about this before, is freezing the property taxes of people who are in those particular communities where this is a real threat is a real serious topic that we need to talk about, because it's a real solution to that problem.
Mr. Griggs.
Yes, this is one of the goals of the housing policy. The types of areas that we set out in the city of Dallas were areas in the city of Dallas ready for redevelopment and more housing. Then we identified areas that are threatened by gentrification, and we identified those areas I mentioned before that lack the basic infrastructure. On the areas that are getting pushed out by gentrification forces, what we can do as the city of Dallas is be very careful with how we use zoning. Oftentimes upzoning residential areas to turn into multifamily areas or into mixed-use areas drives up prices, and it forces people out. So we have to be very careful how we go about using our zoning. An example that I did in Oak Cliff was on Jefferson. We didn't want Jefferson to lose its character on that corridor, and so I saw that zoning from the beginning to the end. So we said every single use and every single building there can stay. That's how you let the community know that things are welcome. And then you stabilize the area right away when new zoning comes in with basic infrastructure, like fixing sidewalks, putting in street trees, putting in street furniture, and making it beautiful. So you use the tool things together to stabilize the area like we've done in Oak Cliff. Thank you.
Rebuttal, Mr. Johnson?
Well, I just want to make sure that people understand that I'm concerned about what happened in North Oak Cliff is in many ways a success story, but in many ways there would be people who would say that has been an example of gentrification, that we have to, it's not an unmitigated success in terms of there have been people who have been displaced through that development. So we have to be careful about using North Oak Cliff as the model for what we want to see happen in the rest of the southern part of our city. I've grown up my whole life here, and I actually lived in North Oak Cliff before we moved deeper into Oak Cliff, and I can tell you it's a very different place now than it was when I was growing up.
So, Mr. Griggs, we'll start with you on this next question. Both of you have great ideas, but of course they cost money. And we all have read about the Texas legislature passing a bill imposing a 3.5% cap on revenue collections from property taxes over the previous year. So some, of course, call this tax relief, and others call it handcuffing local government. Mr. Griggs, starting with you, where do you stand?
I believe strongly in local control. I think the state sends us too many unfunded mandates and tries to tell us how to run a city. You can't run the city of Dallas like you would some small town out in Texas. And so passing one set of rules for all of us doesn't make sense. And what we need to do on the budget is two things. One, we've got to go through the budget every single time, like I've done in the last 8 years, and find money in the budget that we can reallocate and find money that's not being spent in the best way and move that over to our priorities, such as public safety, helping out with housing, taking care of our parks, rec centers, our streets, taking care of the basics. And then we need to do other things. We've got to grow the tax base. And the greatest opportunity for doing that is in Southern Dallas. We have to continue the initiatives that we've started in Southern Dallas, bringing more economic development. For example, I believe in not only doing large projects in Southern Dallas, but we need to do small projects in neighborhoods throughout Southern Dallas. Just like we've done, I mentioned, the small projects between the buildings, fixing up retail areas, making people believe that the city of Dallas loves them. There's no better way to do that than to fix up someone's neighborhood retail area where they want to shop and where they want to eat. So we need to do that throughout Southern Dallas. And then we'll also grow the tax base in Southern Dallas by addressing the needs of Southern Dallas. Grocery stores and food deserts. More banking where there's not enough access to capital by entrepreneurs or by other people who just need to cash a check and have a banking account. So those types of issues are going to grow the tax base in Southern Dallas, and that's going to help the entire city.
Mr. Johnson?
I was just, on the front lines of this issue, so it's pretty, still pretty raw for me because I was very adamant in the legislature about the need to deliver property tax relief, particularly for people who live in cities like Dallas. Dallas has the highest city property tax rate of any major city in the state. And I've said this so many times on the campaign trail that people have heard me say this before, probably tired of hearing me say it, but it's important to understand. Houston's a larger city than we are. Our taxes are 35% higher than theirs. San Antonio is a larger city than us. Our taxes are 40% higher than theirs. Austin is right behind us in population. Our taxes are 75% higher than theirs. So we need property tax relief in Dallas. And the way to get it, and I'm glad you agree with me at this point, is to increase the tax base so that we can actually lower the amount that any individual is paying. But the mistake the legislature made, I believe, in what they should have done, and I could not get them to I got everybody in the Dallas delegation, Republican and Democrat, to stick with me on an amendment to this bill that would have allowed a carve-out for public safety. We definitely need to be able to increase our spending year over year to hire more police and fire, but do that outside of this 3.5% cap, because that is going to severely curtail our ability to hire more police and fire. That amendment did not get on. In fact, no amendments were allowed onto the bill, and so the bill stayed the way it is. So what we have to do in order to work around this cap is new growth doesn't count towards the cap, so we have to grow the tax base. That's the only way we can do it at this point.
Mr. Griggs, rebuttal?
Yes, our two greatest opportunities to grow Southern Dallas, one is called opportunity zones. Between the changes that have just been made to the federal tax law and what's been set up is there's 15 areas in the city of Dallas, primarily in Southern Dallas, from Hensley Field to West Dallas to the Oak Cliff Gateway to the Cedars to Fair Park, Lancaster Corridor, and along the Buckner Corridor, areas where developers will get great big tax incentives to build development. So we need to get in ahead of time with plans and how we're going to grow these opportunity zones. Then we need to look at our areas of concentrated areas of poverty and turn those around by actually investing in them. And that's how we're going to increase the tax base in Southern Dallas.
And we'll get there, Mr. Griggs. A number of great topics that you've already talked about: budget, growing the tax base, economic development, and public safety. We'll get to all of those. In the meantime, I want to again ask Jeff to raise his hand. All of you should have received a white blank card on your chairs. This is the time, if you have a question that you'd like to address to both candidates, be sure to fill those out. And we've got folks from the League of Women Voters walking around the room and others picking those cards up. So they'll, hopefully, if you have nice handwriting, please write nice handwriting. So I'm already playing trombone up here a little bit. So let's continue first. Lots of great things that we're discussing. Let's continue on the budget. So, Mr. Griggs, you started. How will you identify the funds needed in order to accomplish all the things that you both have talked about? Lots of options. There's reallocating, there's cutting the budget, there's advocating for raising taxes, and then also, of course, attracting new jobs and companies. What will you pledge to do, and what will you as candidates pledge not or never to do as mayor of Dallas? And I believe, Mr. Johnson, we start with you on this one.
I think this is, to me, this is the question. This is the question that the city of Dallas needs to ask going into this election. I have consistently, from day one, I've not changed my tune on this. Other candidates have come around, and I'm grateful that people are coming around to my point of view on this, but I have been arguing first and foremost that we need in this city to enhance our tax base by attracting new business to the city. New business to the city within our city limits so that we can tax that new business so that we can lower the burden on any individual taxpayer that's currently in the city. Because right now we are in what I've been calling a municipal tax death spiral where our taxes keep going up and up and up to make up for the lack of tax base because we're losing so much to our surrounding cities for myriad reasons. The focus must be on the southern part of our city because that's where the potential is to grow. But I think it's important that we understand that the tax issue is paramount to me because I do believe that the only way that our city is going to be able to prosper and the only way we're going to be able to continue down, I think the city's on the right path where things are going well in our city, but our tax burden is heavy. And I've heard from businesses that the combination of our tax burden and the fact that it's not the easiest place in the world to do business with the city staff itself and the city of Dallas contributes to us losing to a certain degree to our surrounding municipalities. So I want to improve our tax base by attracting more businesses and not increasing taxes.
Mr. Griggs.
Yes, with the budget, we're going to do three things to make the tax base grow. Number one, we're going to reallocate money within the budget that's more towards our priorities. I have a demonstrated record of doing this on issues working with the Dallas City Council to raise police pay from $48,000 to $60,000 starting pay this last budget. Also, in Southern Dallas, my plan is that we look at these opportunity zones I just talked about and the concentrated areas of poverty. When I was chair of the housing committee, we authorized a fair housing assessment of the city of Dallas and identified all the concentrated areas of poverty, which have grown from the year 2000. We had about 20 square miles to 2016 when we have 40 square miles. That's the size of the city of Carrollton inside the city of Dallas in concentrated poverty. And what our study showed was that we are not spending money in the concentrated areas of poverty. So we need to use a data-driven approach and spend money in the concentrated areas of poverty. That's going to be so important to turn those areas around, and we know where they are. And so equity has to be a big word in how we spend our money because it's going to lift up the entire city of Dallas. Lastly, we need to make it easier to do business in the city of Dallas. That means making it a mayoral priority to redo the Oak Cliff Municipal Center and the whole process for going through building inspection and building permit. That is a priority for me. If any of you have ever been through that process, you know how daunting and difficult it is. And we should, as the city of Dallas, have the best building inspection permitting system in the United States. We need to be number one on that, and we need to get to electronic filing and the other ways that are going to make us the best so that companies do not lose so much time filing. Thank you.
Rebuttal?
So I identified in my initial talk what I would do to pay for things and how I would approach things, growing the base and growing the pie. But I think we do need to contrast and make sure it's clear, and hopefully we can talk about it in more detail in this debate, the difference between myself and my opponent. My opponent has said repeatedly, form after form, that he believes we can cut our way to paying for these other priorities. He's saying he can identify $16 million worth of waste, fraud, and abuse in our current budget that we could redirect towards paying police and fire. And I have challenged him to identify where he would cut that $16 million from.
So let's
I'll
go
just
there.
respond to that.
Absolutely. We'll start all over.
Yeah.
Mr. Griggs, with a new question. How would you recommend that as a city we come up with these funds specifically outside of
Again,
cutting
I have
economic development?
3 ways, not one way, 3 ways. We reallocate money grow the tax base, and then make it easier to do business in the city of Dallas. On reallocating taxpayer money in the budget's $1.3 billion. Every time that budget amendments come up after the budget's presented by the city manager, we go through the budget and find ways to move money. That's what we did this last budget. When it started out at police pay at $48,000, we had the lowest starting pay for police officers and firefighters in North Texas. And that was a big issue at the Dallas City Council this last budget. We raised starting pay to $60,000. I proposed budget amendments to $60,000 and a 5% across the board raise. And the money's in there. The documents are a matter of public record where I found the money, and proposed several different ways to do it. Then we built up a compromise because we couldn't get to 8 votes on $60,000 and 5% across the board. So we did $60,000 and 3% across the board and got 12 votes on the Dallas City Council to do that. That's how we build up compromise and going through the budget line item by line item to find where you can move money. Sometimes you find it in what's called a full-time equivalent that's not really needed anymore. Sometimes you find it in a different fund that doesn't need so much money, or you find it in a program that money is going into, and then the money's not getting spent, and the money gets reallocated by the city manager. So we need to tell the city manager what our priorities are, because the budget is a reflection of our priorities. So I've got the experience of going through budgets and reallocating money through budget amendments, been doing it for 8 years successfully. I know how to grow the tax base, and then to make it a mayoral priority to redo
Griggs,
areas like Aqua.
we'll come back to you with a rebuttal. Yeah, Mr. Johnson, you have 90 seconds.
So the reason I want to push back on this so hard is because this is one of those areas where we truly do have a disagreement about the way to get something that's very important for the taxpayers done. There is not the narrative that there's $16 million or more in just waste, fraud, and abuse in the budgets that you've been voting for the past 8 years that you are going to find annually, year over year, to fund these priorities that we keep talking about. To me, this is a transparency issue. I'm here to tell you, as a public finance attorney for the past 15 years, there is not in the budgets that our city council have been passing, $16 million worth of fluff and waste. These are things that you will have to make a choice about, that he's not being forthcoming about, if you want to reallocate to police and fire. We spend 2/3 of our general fund budget now on public safety. If you want to spend more than that on public safety, that's your choice, but that means a library. It means a park. It means something that he doesn't want to tell you that it means, because he wants to tell you that we can do all of this. It doesn't work that way. These are real choices. I'm being transparent with you and telling you that the way forward is to grow us out of this situation by enhancing the tax base sufficiently to generate more revenue, not pretending that there's so much waste in our budget. This narrative that there's so much waste in municipal budgets, by the way, is exactly how we got the revenue cap in Austin. This is exactly the talking point that was used to beat the major cities in this state. They were dealing with growth every single day into a 3.5%, very draconian, very harsh revenue cap, way too low for a city like Dallas, because we've been told so many times that we're wasting money.
Mr. Griggs, rebuttal?
Yes, absolutely. There is the money in the budget. It's a $3.1 billion budget. There's a $1.3 billion general fund. You can absolutely find year after year between $16 and $20 million to reallocate. I've done it every year over the last 8 years. One year what we did was we looked at back office administrative support and found ways to cut back office administrative support using technology and assigning different roles to different people to do it. The money's there. Is a giant budget of $1.3 billion, and oftentimes giving our police officers and firefighters a raise comes down to just finding $16 million in a $1.3 billion budget. And I've got a track record of doing that on the Dallas City Council, and I will grow the tax base.
Griggs. Thank you very much. New question. So you both have talked about growing the tax base. So this question begins with Mr. Johnson, but it's for both of you. So what is your opinion as it relates to tax rates for businesses who promise to come here and bring jobs and economic development? Amazon, for example. Is that a boondoggle? Is it a corporate giveaway? Or is it a vital tool? And if you don't believe in those, what would you do to attract businesses like Amazon or others?
So
Mr. Johnson.
The benefit of having been in the legislature for the past 10 years for you as a voter is that I have a track record that you can actually hold up and inspect and hold me accountable for the decisions I've actually made. This is not just me saying, oh, this is what I would do, this is what I would believe. I've actually had to cast a vote before. So on this issue, I have voted, and in fact, I voted this session to renew state law to allow for these tax abatement programs to be offered by municipalities. I voted in favor of this tool. I believe it's an important tool for municipalities to have to be able to offer tax incentives to companies to relocate to their cities. I do. Now, that being said, every single one of these deals is a case-by-case situation where a municipality is making a decision about what to offer, how much, under what circumstances, what the conditions are, and whatnot. Doesn't mean that every time we've ever done this, we've actually made a good offer, or we've gotten a good deal. I personally believe that the tool should be available. It should be used very judiciously. And I would say this, and this is something that Austin has proven over and over and over again. The more robust your workforce is, the better your business climate is for doing business, i.e. the easier it is to do business with City Hall, and the better your workforce is, the less you have to offer in incentives, because people want to be there anyway. You can offer smaller incentives and even no incentives. Apple just opened a whole new facility in Austin without a single incentive, hiring hundreds more people because they just want to be in Austin, because that's where the talent is. When Dallas becomes a more talented workforce, then we won't have to offer as many incentives.
Mr. Griggs.
Absolutely. Incentives are so important. And what I try to look at with incentives is make sure the city of Dallas is getting something in exchange for these incentives. I'll give you some examples of things I've approved and things that I thought were mistakes. In West Dallas, when Amazon wanted to come to West Dallas and build a giant warehouse, we asked that they raise the wages over there to starting wages on the floor to $13 per hour in exchange for millions of dollars in tax abatements. That was a good deal because it created so many jobs in West Dallas. We also asked Amazon to hire at least 35% of the workforce from the city of Dallas. That's how we use our tax incentives to improve our workforce. An example of something I did not approve was we gave Costco, opening off of Central Expressway, $3 million to open that Costco. I don't know how many of you have been there and seen the giant parking lot and seen them making money hand over fist. They didn't need $3 million to open that Costco. Another one that I didn't support was giving ESPN $300,000 to put on a football game the day after Christmas because the football game wasn't going to make enough money. Those are not good investments of our funds. What are good investments are lifting up our workforce like we've done in West Dallas and some instances of the inland port.
Mr. Johnson, do you have a rebuttal?
Well, just briefly, I would just say that, again, the incentives are an important tool to have, but every deal is a case-by-case situation, and we have to just make sure that we are getting a good deal. But I want to make sure we're clear that the best way to wean yourself off of incentives is to double down on the workforce, which is what I've been saying for a long time. When Dallas becomes a more desirable place organically for people to companies to want to be, because our workforce is more talented and it's local and it's close and people can get to their jobs very easily, then they'll want to be here without these incentives. But we do need to have the tool in the toolbox.
So let's put the case by case to test. Quick 10-second lightning round question. Amazon incentive, would you have offered it or not? Mr. Griggs, yes or no?
What is the total package that you're talking about?
No, the one that we offered.
No, too much.
I'm actually in agreement that it was too high. It was too high.
Okay, very good. Mr. Griggs, this question goes to you. For years, we've heard mayors and some members of the city council talk about, listen, DISD, another board, not our fiduciary responsibility, can't be involved, we're stepping on toes. From your perspective and the view of the city of Dallas, in particular the role of the mayor, what role does the mayor play in education, and not just DISD, but RISD and the Dallas County Community College District as well? Mr. Griggs.
Thank you. As mayor, I'll continue to be a huge booster for public education in the city of Dallas. What we need to do with DISD and RISD and the others, encourage them to have all-day universal pre-K. Make that happen. And then the city of Dallas, when we build facilities like our libraries and rec centers, we need to co-locate them on DISD property or on other public school district property. The two best libraries in the city of Dallas are Hampton, Illinois, and Arcadia Park. They're attached to DISD campuses. And during the day, these libraries serve the students. Then as it becomes afternoon and evening, the entire community. In fact, from a budget perspective, it was the only two libraries we were able to keep open in the city of Dallas during the Great Recession. We need to do the same thing with our rec centers. And then we need to make our libraries and rec centers more open in the afternoons and in the summertime for after-school care and summer educational programs with DISD. The city of Dallas has a number of those, and I plan on continuing the funding of those programs also. Then we need to continue to work with DCCCD. Just $1 billion bond program that was just passed is fabulous. We need to make sure that translates into workforce training for people throughout the city of Dallas, and particularly Southern Dallas, and jobs related to coding and software and technology, which are so important. That's how I would handle education.
Mr. Johnson.
I think the bullet pulpit of the mayor's office is a tremendously powerful tool that should be utilized at every opportunity on behalf of DISD. I believe that the first person that a person we have 250 people who move to the DFW area every single day. We're the highest net migration city in the United States. We passed Houston last year for that title. 250 people a day. The first person most of these people will interact with when they get here is a realtor. They want to know where they should live. And unfortunately, some of the things I hear that realtors are telling some of these folks sometimes is, hey, Dallas is a great city, but some of our schools are, and they're doing this. We don't want that. We want realtors and everyone else to be able to say truthfully, oh, DISD is an asset. DISD is actually, you want to be in Dallas. The DISD is doing very, very well. It's actually a great value for your tax dollars. That's not exactly what people are saying right now, because that's not exactly how people feel about the district, but the mayor can help change that narrative. The mayor can be the person out there saying, and in my case, my children attend DISD school. I can say that in all honesty. My child has been entrusted to the DISD for their education. I went to Green Hill for 11 years. My wife went to Green Hill for 13 years. Our child is at DISD. What does that tell you about how we feel about our school district? That's a powerful message to send, and we need to send it because we want people to look at our school district as an asset, not as a liability that has to be overcome by finding some other way to educate your children. The mayor has a great pulpit to do that from.
Mr. Griggs, rebuttal.
Yes, a big aspect that we need to work with DISD and RISD on is planning and zoning. Where are they going to build the campuses? Where in the city of Dallas are we planning on putting more houses, more apartments? Because that really impacts DISD and RISD so much. And so with that task, I'm going to continue the joint educational task force that the city of Dallas has with DISD and other school districts and make that one of their priorities to address, is planning for the future so we know where to build these future campuses. And I'm actually a product of public education, went from Richardson Independent School District all the way through the University of Texas Public Education. I'm a huge believer in it and how great it is.
Okay, gentlemen, so much to cover and so little. I'm worn out. How about you?
Come on, Creighton.
Yeah, well, I'm standing
Toughen
up
up
here. Let's talk about public safety. Specific tactics you propose to ensure that we have the police officers that we need. I believe we start with Mr. Griggs on this one.
Public safety is my #1 priority. We have too few police officers in the city of Dallas. Before the pension crisis, we had 3,600 police officers. Then, as you all know, the pension crisis was terrible. We were able to, I served on the pension system. We were able to save the pension system from going under, which saved the city of Dallas from going under. But as a result of that, we had 2,900 officers at the end of that. Right now, on a priority 1 call, lights and sirens, maybe the most important emergency call you make to the city of Dallas, half the time we do not have a police officer available to timely answer that call within 8 minutes. Priority 2 call, it's 2/3 of the time. And then we see the other information coming out. We don't have enough officers right now to do speed patrol. That's suffering. And we're seeing the illegal high-speed racing happen throughout southern Dallas and even fatalities from it. And then this month, we've had more than 30 murders this month. Crime is increasing. We are in a public safety crisis, and I intend on making this my #1 priority and dealing with it by increasing police pay and by increasing police benefits. That's what we need at the city of Dallas to be competitive, to attract and retain more officers. We have to increase pay and benefits, and I'm ready to do that on day 1. I can find the money in the budget, just like we've done in different years, the small amounts of money it takes to make a huge difference in attracting and retaining officers. Because of my plan, I've been endorsed by the Dallas Police Association, the Dallas Retired Police Officers, the Dallas Firefighters, and the Dallas Retired Firefighters. It is a plan that's going to work and return our culture of safety to the city of Dallas.
Mr. Johnson?
My father is a former Dallas police officer. I've been endorsed by the Black Police Officers Association, the Black Firefighters. We all have our law enforcement endorsements. I don't think there's anyone who ran for mayor this cycle who didn't argue that we needed to hire more police. I think we all agree on it. I think the key for the very intelligent people in this room to understand, there's no one running for mayor who doesn't want to hire more police and wants to make you less safe and wants to let you fend for yourself and wishes you good luck if someone calls 911. There's no one doing that. This is the reality, though. 100% of your property tax goes to public safety. 100% of it. 30% of all of the sales tax collections in the city of Dallas goes to public safety already. We're back to the original issue of where is this additional money going to come from in the current budget to do all of these things that we want to do for law enforcement? The answer is we have to grow that tax base and increase the revenue that way, but we want to be transparent about it. And the reason I probably don't have the Dallas Police Association's endorsements is because I wouldn't tell them exactly what they wanted to hear, which is that we will cut libraries and parks and everything else to make sure you get your raise today, exactly what you want, and we will and commit to doing a pension bond right away. And I said, my father's a former law enforcement officer. I'm a law enforcement child. I appreciate what you do, and I'm going to make sure that we take care of you, but we have to make sure that we do this in a way that the city can also maintain its other commitments, its other priorities, and we will take care of our law enforcement. I promise you we'll do that, but there's a reality here that we have to take into account.
Mr. Griggs?
We're losing our culture of safety here in the city of Dallas, and it's so important. It helps protect our homes and our businesses. That's why public safety is such a priority for me, and on day one, we are going to increase the number of police officers we have so people don't have to wait on those 911 calls, so that we have more officers out to make more arrests and drive the crime rate down. That's what we're going to do. And small things like even more homicide investigators. We do not have the necessary number of homicide investigators. That's why this is such a priority for me, and on day one, I'm ready to tackle it.
Mr. Johnson, beginning with you, it seems like almost on a weekly basis now we hear the story on the news of another religious community or school that's been attacked. From a public safety perspective, specifically, how will you address this issue of ensuring that our citizens are safe, our children are safe? And there was a question from the audience about, in particular, the LGBTQ community.
Yes.
How will you make sure, as mayor, we are safe?
I think it's a great question. I've only heard it one other time during the entire campaign, and the answer I gave then is the answer I'll give today. Looking at it as a law enforcement or public safety issue is not wrong, but it's not the smartest way to look at it. Because if you think about it, the law enforcement aspect of this problem only comes into play after something's already happened. Law enforcement doesn't prevent hate crimes, law enforcement responds to them. So a synagogue's already been vandalized by the time you get the police involved. A transgender person's already been hurt by the time you get the police involved. The question that the mayor has to figure out is, how do you make Dallas a loving, welcoming, open-minded, progressive city that these things don't happen in the first place, so there's nothing to respond to? And the way you do that is by setting a tone of collaboration, consensus building, not dividing people, not running campaigns based on pitting people against each other and trying to create divisions by saying, oh, well, those are the rich people and those are the poor people, and you can't like that person because they have too much money, and you can't like that person because they have too much melanin, and you can't like that person because they are, whatever. The tone has to be set by the mayor, and the tone I want to set in this city is we're all Dallasites, we all want the same things, we have some issues that we need to address, we're going to call them challenges, not crises. We're not going to set people into panics. We're not going to try to market our city internationally and around this country by describing everything that we have as a challenge, as a crisis. We're going to meet these challenges together. That's the idea.
Mr. Griggs?
Yes, we need to be one city. And what I've done as a Dallas City Council member is you put people on your boards and commissions from all across the city of Dallas and from all walks of life. That's so important to bringing people together, to bringing them into leadership roles. And then public safety is a big part of it. We need more police officers out that are visible. That also helps drive down crime. When we have more officers out, because then we also have more neighborhood patrol officers that have relationships with particular neighborhoods, with particular communities, go out there and talk to them and said, have you seen anything threatening? Do you know about this? How can we help you? So for me, it's going to be a two-part approach, continue engaging the entire city of Dallas, putting people from all walks of life on boards and commissions in leadership positions, then boosting the Dallas Police Department so that we have enough neighborhood patrol officers to help with those community relationships that are so important, so that there's an officer, an MPO in every single important community in the city of Dallas, hearing what their concerns are and taking care of things, even if it's just a whisper that something may be going on, getting them to investigate it. That's how I'll handle it. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, a rebuttal?
Again, I don't think there's anyone who's ever run for mayor, maybe not just in this cycle, maybe in history, who's ever run on, I don't support increasing public safety. But I just want to be really, really honest about this question, because it's such a good question, such a rare question to get on a campaign trail.
Well,
like
thank
mayor.
you.
That's
Thanks.
a great question. Whatever.
Glad
I've just never heard someone emphasize public safety and law enforcement as the answer or the solution to hate crimes or to hate. That's such a reactive approach to that problem. The way you approach that problem is through love and on the front end and inclusion on the front end. Sorry, I didn't mean to run over.
Okay, great. Last question under this format. We cannot let you go without talking about ethics. We've just had a former acting mayor go to prison, had a sitting city council member also convicted. Can't let you get away with saying we need to beef up the ethics advisory board.
Can we just clarify that it's not Mary Poss that we were talking about? Okay. Thank you. All right. That she's here. I mean,
Nobody's throwing anything
all right,
yet.
so we'll make sure we're not, okay. Not that acting man. Right, okay.
Thank you for clarifying. We were all very worried.
I got your back, Mary.
Specifically, gentlemen, what would you do to ensure that not only the existing ethics standards, but those that need to be in place to ensure that we've got the right folks representing us at the Horseshoe at Dallas City Hall? Mr. Griggs, we begin with you.
Yes, ethics and transparency are so important at City Hall, and we need to boost the ethics and transparency program. We did a great job a couple years ago when it was led by John Rogers, a former city attorney, a great ethics. He reviewed the whole thing and came up with some revisions. We implemented them as the Dallas City Council. Some of the big ones we did were now, if there's any ethical transgressions, it can be anything from just a letter all the way up to removal from the Dallas City Council. And if there's anything criminal, it's referred to the district attorney's office. So we need to build on that further, and I have a multi-part plan to do that. Number one, you look back at Don Hill, Dwayne Caraway, Carolyn Davis. All of them were involved in low-income housing tax credit deals that where developers were giving them money. So I'd like to put a rule in place that once a low-income housing tax credit developer files for an application with the city of Dallas, they're not allowed to talk to council members until the matter is heard publicly. Number two, we need council members to file lobbyist reports. Who is lobbying us? And then number three, I call it follow the money. We need a single database at City Hall that has our campaign finance records in it, that has the lobbyist reports from council members, the lobbyist reports from lobbyists, and statements of interests from developers and others who stand to gain financial gain from us approving an agenda item. So in a single database, you can put in any location, any case, any person's name, and follow the money. The next part of it that we need to do is have an Office of Professional Responsibility that will immediately review campaign finance reports when they're filed and point out any errors in them so it can be dealt with then.
Mr. Griggs, we'll circle
Yes.
back to you on the rebuttal. Mr. Johnson.
So I want to say this as respectfully and as lovingly as I can, but it's important because it's just a matter of fact. Our city's ethics code is so toothless and so poorly written and so laxly enforced that you can sit here on stage, literally, having violated it more than once, and campaign as someone who's in favor of ethics, because that's how toothless it is. There's literally no recourse right now for the taxpayers whatsoever for things as egregious as violating the individual contribution limit by funneling the contributions through, well, minor children if you want, other people if you want. There's just, it does not work the way it is right now, and we need someone to come in and reform it who truly comes from outside the system. These are facts. These are things you can read on your own. So what I would propose doing is bringing in outside folks, people who are not connected at all, not a city attorney, not someone who's on the current council who's got pending ethics issues. I would actually say, let's bring in true outside folks who actually know something about how ethics code should be written, people who've helped write our ethics code at the state level, perhaps. Maybe Steve Willens, the chair of the Texas Ethics Commission, who's an expert on this stuff. Maybe he or someone else can help us actually write an ethics code that people will actually think about at least for half a second before they break. Because right now, it's very clear that no one even thinks about what the impact or the implications are going to be for breaking it. Because right now, there are no
Mr.
consequences.
Griggs, rebuttal.
Yes, I am ethical, and this is a big difference between us. We both have about 10 years of campaign finance reports filed. When anyone raises any issue about any campaign contribution that I've ever received, even if it's several years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I donate the money or give it back if it doesn't reach my personal high ethical standards. I mean, that would be a difference with some of the people that have been recently convicted. I know you took money from Larry Duncan. I would challenge you, because that came from Larry Duncan's campaign fund, that came from DCS. I would challenge you, donate that money to some great cause, just like I did when I received money. I didn't know that they were bad people. Found out later they were bad people that gave me money. I donated it.
Mr. Griggs.
That's what we have to do.
Mr. Johnson, we're going to now move to our lightning round. So 10 seconds, are my friends from the League of Women Voters, are you with me? 10 seconds each. We're going to hold them to it. Can we do it? All right. So we'll start with Mr. Griggs. Again, 10 seconds each, in some cases a yes or no answer. First, what endorsement in this election are you most proud of? Mr. Griggs.
Sandy Grayson's.
Mr. Johnson.
Wow. All the mayors?
All right. Mr. Johnson, do you support moving the city's municipal elections to November to coincide with state and federal races? Mr. Johnson?
No, because the races will be too far down the ballot, and you'll offset any benefit to moving them by putting them so far.
Use your mic. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
A politician who
No.
didn't use the mic. It's unbelievable.
Sorry, no, I don't.
Mr. Griggs.
No, because I worry about December runoffs right before Christmas and during so many religious holidays, and then we would be having this event right over Thanksgiving.
Mr. Griggs, what's your favorite City of Dallas park?
Park?
Yep.
It would be Acorn Park. It's in walking distance from my house, and it's got great stuff for the kids who are 5, 3, and 1 to play on.
Mr. Johnson?
White Rock Lake.
Mr. Johnson, if one of the Dallas sports teams were guaranteed to win a title sometime during your term and you could pick the team, which one would you choose?
Oh my goodness. Oh, my Cowboys need one. They don't. I mean, they really need one. I want my Cowboys to get back in where they belong. I do. Sorry.
Mr. Griggs?
The Mavericks. I love that they're right in the city of Dallas.
Mr. Griggs, if elected, will you have a second job during your term?
I will still practice law.
Mr. Johnson?
I'm probably going to continue to practice law, but I'll see. My wife works and she does very well, so we'll be fine. We'll figure it out.
Mr. Johnson, what would be your very first act as mayor in 10 seconds?
The ethics reform.
Mr. Johnson or Mr. Griggs?
I mean, like day one, you have to move in. But beyond that, taking care of public safety.
Mr. Griggs, what is the single accomplishment you are most proud of in your political career?
Contribution to the comprehensive housing policy. Cities needed it for years.
Mr. Johnson?
The school discipline bill banning the suspension of kids under the 2nd grade from school.
Mr. Johnson, what is the one single moment, decision, or action you are least proud of in your political career?
Oh, wow.
In 10 seconds.
Challenging Dennis Bonnen for Speaker of the House.
I was going to agree with you, but it would be inappropriate. Mr. Griggs.
Which was the question? Which is
Yeah, repeat the question. One single moment, decision, or action you are least proud of in your political career?
I would say being on the Dallas City Council, what I wish I had done more of is gone out to lunch with the council more often. We're all such a great bunch, and we don't see each other enough, and they're all just wonderful people.
Mr. Griggs, who is your favorite historical figure?
Historical figure.
Yeah.
Since we're on the city and all I'm thinking about is city stuff.
You can't say Sandy Grayson.
No, I was going to say she's not historical. I can't believe you would say that. She's
can't say
current,
Mary
relevant,
Poss
about
either.
the future. Sandy Grayson is about the. I would say I'll go with the mayor, Wes Wise.
Okay.
It's Mary Poss. I'm just kidding. No, I'm going to go with Martin Luther King. He's a great guy, great
All right.
man.
Mr. Johnson, which of your children is your favorite? No, I'm teasing. No, that's not what that's. Ken Malcolmson wanted me to ask boxers or briefs, but I said, no way. We're not going there. Actually, who is your favorite former Dallas mayor, Mr. Johnson?
Eric Johnson. The first Eric Johnson.
Mr.
All right,
Griggs.
answer Wes Wise.
Okay. Gentlemen, a couple of questions before we go to audience questions.
Those
These
are
are
good.
directed to you individually. You each will have 90 seconds, no rebuttal. You have both been accused, in some cases by your critics, in some cases by one another, of lacking the temperament to be mayor. Mr. Johnson, you accused of being thin-skinned. Mr. Griggs,
That hurt my
you
feelings.
accused of lacking civility. What do you say to that? Mr. Griggs, we'll begin with you.
I have a thick skin and a big heart. Love serving on the Dallas City Council. I am not divisive. Oftentimes get labeled that because some people I call it accountability. Like recently with Visit Jones saying the CEO needed to step down. People said that's being divisive or divisive. That's the biggest actually question that's come up is do you pronounce it divisive or divisive? There's actually a division on that. And then other things like common sense, like the Trinity Toll Road. I was a huge opponent of the Trinity Toll Road. I was often labeled, in that case, divisive for the Trinity Toll Road. But I got big skin, thick heart, love everyone. I'm extremely accessible. You can reach out to me on social media. You can call me. My phone number's on all my literature. I love interacting with people. If we agree or we disagree, it doesn't matter. We are all Dallasites, and that's how I promote One Dallas. I absolutely love this city.
Mr. Johnson, 90 seconds.
Well, I think I've given it some thought about why I am the way I am, and I'm who I am, and who I am is this. I'm someone who grew up in an environment in West Dallas and later Oak Cliff, but really my formative years in West Dallas, where if people messed with you and you didn't respond, that was a formula for guaranteeing that you were going to get messed with for the rest of your life. That's how that worked. That's the environment I grew up in. So I think the thin skin label is really it's inaccurate, but I know what they're getting at. It's that I will definitely stand up for myself. I will definitely respond when I feel that people are not living up to standards I think that we should hold in public service. My criticism has been that when my colleagues or folks have disappointed me on a vote or something that I thought they should have done for their constituents, and I've let them know about it. Well, it's because I take what I do very seriously. I'm a very passionate person, and I really do believe that that passion is what's made me effective. I didn't get any of the things I got done as a minority member of the legislature, a member of the minority party from Dallas, away from the power structure in Austin. I didn't get anything done down there by being a shrinking violet and not being willing to fight for what I believe in. So some people call it thin skin, I guess, but I call it standing up for yourself and fighting for your constituents and fighting for Dallas and fighting for Texas.
You notice this was the only question where they didn't take all 90 seconds? All right.
That also hurt my feelings.
Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, as your opponent noted earlier, he's received the endorsement of the firefighters and police unions. What does that say about your candidacy and your relationship with law enforcement?
I have a great relationship with the rank and file of law enforcement. I think that's an important distinction to draw. The union and the rank and file are not the same thing. Again, there are other law enforcement unions that have endorsed me. We have several of them. And so the bottom line is I think the rank and file law enforcement know that I'm just as supportive of them as anyone has ever sought the office, and I'll continue to be supportive of them. But this is a political deal, and the unions are in politics. They have a PAC. They give money. They're playing a game of politics like everyone else in politics. I believe that the rank and file of the law enforcement community understand that I'm as committed to law enforcement as anybody.
Mr. Griggs, your opponent has received the endorsement of multiple former mayors, the majority of your current colleagues on the Dallas City Council. What does that say about your candidacy and your relationship with your colleagues at the Horseshoe?
My candidacy is strong because I've been endorsed by so many people also, from current city council members to future city council members to DISD trustees, all the way up to members of former congressmen, all the way up to someone who served as Secretary of State of Texas. So it is a viable, strong candidacy because I have the people is what counts. And I run a campaign not on endorsements, but on issues. And the issues and the message that's getting out there is resonating with people in the city of Dallas. So that's why it's a very strong campaign.
Thank you, Mr. Griggs. Mr. Griggs, in the mayor's general election race held in May, your opponent received the most votes for mayor and carried precincts in all parts of Dallas. What is your path to victory as a candidate in this runoff election?
Well, I would say also we both did, I think there was only 1,400 or so votes that separated the two of us. So it's
1,357. I'm just kidding. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea.
1,357, all right.
I'm joking. I have no idea.
Round it up for you.
Totally joke. I have no idea.
Okay, that was fast. We really have the same vote, because you want to know about this election? There's about over 60% of the people that voted, and we know it was an abysmal rate, about 10%, but 60% of the people that voted in this last election didn't vote for you, and they didn't vote for me.
What's wrong with those people?
We're trying to, don't say that because that could be some people here. There's nothing wrong with you. I love you. Call me after this is over. I will be your mayor. And there was nothing wrong with you before. I will work with you before and afterwards.
You're good, Scott. You're good.
Thank you. See, that's why we're.
You guys should go on the road.
So that's what I think. That's what I think about. So it's really reaching out. The path to victory is very similar for both of us, because there's 60% of the people that participate in the last election, when there were 9 candidates, didn't vote for Eric Johnson. They didn't vote for Scott Griggs. So it's getting out the word. And all of you, 60%, you're wonderful. Please consider voting for Scott Griggs for the city of Dallas.
Mr. Johnson, similarly, in the general election, your opponent came in second in a field of 9 and lost by only 2 points to you, but spent significantly less money than you did in the campaign. What is your path to victory in this runoff?
Well, I think I'm going to run the same race, and I have been running the same race throughout, because I don't believe in I don't want a victory that is a sort of a targeted, we're going to piece together this constituency and that constituency, that leads to victory. I want to be the mayor of all of Dallas. I genuinely want to be someone that every person in every part of the city can see as their leader and be proud of and say that person has our interests at heart and is going to work hard for us. I don't want to piece together a strategic victory. I want to actually represent the whole city. So we will continue to campaign across the entire city. Our campaign playbook is open to you. Here's the playbook. Go to every part of the city and make a strong case for why in the council manager form of government that we have, you will be the person most able to effectively and consistently get 8 or more votes on the things that the people of Dallas think are important, primarily lowering your taxes, delivering on the law enforcement commitments that we have, and improving our infrastructure. If you believe that I'm the most effective person of the two candidates at getting people to go along with them and vote with them, then that's the vote I'm encouraging people to make, and I'm making that case everywhere. I'm making it from south of I-20 in the southernmost part of our city all the way to far north Dallas and east and west and every point in between. So the issue for me is not to try to piece together some technical victory. We want to win every vote we can in every part of the city because I think that's the way you govern.
Let's give these guys a round of applause. Yeah, this is hard. We're not done. But we're not
okay,
done.
well,
Yeah, not even close. I just wanted to give you a little bit of affirmation, right? We have about 10 minutes left before we're going to give each candidate 60 seconds to do a closing statement. And in that time, you all have submitted some really good questions, some of which we've asked along the way, and a few here we want to make sure that we take now. I believe it's time to start with Mr. Johnson. We'll just do 90 seconds each on these so we can get through several of them. All right, first, this is from one of our audience members. Dallas and Fort Worth are the anchors of the DFW region. As mayor, how will you approach the region and its challenges? Regionalism.
Yes. So I believe that regionalism is a concept that is being challenged from a lot of corners as being completely disproven and should be thrown out completely in favor of a very cutthroat competition amongst the municipalities that make up this region for resources, jobs, people, you name it. I think that I understand the sentiment behind that and where that came from. I think it has to do with the problem I've identified with our anemic tax base and wanting to attract businesses back to the city of Dallas, which we definitely have to prioritize. But regionalism has brought us some successes, and one of the premier ones I would hold is DFW. That's not something we wanted to go alone with, something we should have gone alone with. It has worked very well. It's been an economic engine for this entire area, and I think that that's an example of when you are smart about working with your neighbors and working on a regional basis, you can do great things. So I think we need to evaluate the things that we do on a regional basis currently. We need to look at DART, and we need to think about refocusing DART a little bit away from commuter rail and going all over the region and focus more on bus service within the city of Dallas to make Dallas more mobile for our people who depend on mass transit to get to work and to church and to social events and doctor's appointments. But I don't think it's productive to necessarily pronounce the death of regionalism and to attack any of our regional entities like NTTA or DART for being completely confused.
Mr. Griggs.
Yes, the job of the mayor is to be the #1 salesman for the city of Dallas and to believe with all your heart, because you know it's true, there's no place better than the city of Dallas. And that's what I'm going to market to everyone, not only the region, but across the US and across the world, is my belief in the city of Dallas. And when things come up that aren't right, I'm gonna put Dallas first. I'll give you some examples that he touched on. With DART, bus service is not working for our core or for Southern Dallas. DART for too long has been focused on building the longest light rail system in America. It'll take you up to Oklahoma, but it won't get you to Love Field. And we've got so many people in Southern Dallas close to poverty that DART is not working for them, and we're putting $280 million a year into DART. I will change that and say, DART, look at the city of Dallas, and we need to make Dallas a bigger priority. Same with the NTTA. Who's tired of paying tolls in the city of Dallas on the toll road? That was paid off over 30 years ago, and NTTA uses system financing to build the toll roads out near Oklahoma. That's not right. We need more funds from that. And so those types of issues, when they come up, and with the COG, I will say we need money for transportation our fair share of regional transportation funds need to go to the city of Dallas. And then I'm going to just go around and tell everyone there's no place better than Dallas, because it's the absolute truth. And that's the big job of the mayor of the city of Dallas, be the #1 salesman. And that's what I intend on doing.
Excellent. Gentlemen, I have 2 more questions. I want to make sure we get them in. So let's go to 60-second responses. Are you okay with that? A little alteration.
It's your
of the
show.
rule?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Griggs, to start with you, how well are we handling the homeless situation here in Dallas?
I would say we've made huge progress with the situation of handling people experiencing homelessness in the city of Dallas. Wasn't it great what the city council did with the Salvation Army, approving that $95 million facility off of I-35 and Regal Road? Because we know we don't have enough capacity at the existing Salvation Army facility on Harry Hines, and we don't have enough capacity downtown at the bridge. And then the other initiatives from the Office of Homeless Solutions that's beginning to turn this around, one of the great things TC Broadnax has done, introducing the bond money from 2017 to find additional places throughout the city of Dallas where we can help people experiencing homelessness. We started that discussion 3 weeks ago about how to deploy those funds, so important. And then in the comprehensive housing policy, our plan there to set up a mobility assistance and master lease program. We have so many people experiencing homelessness that have a voucher, veterans and families, but they cannot find an apartment complex that accepts the voucher. The city of Dallas can step in and help them find those apartments, fill out the paperwork, and move them in with a voucher. That's the third part of my plan, in addition to continuing the great work of the Citizens Homeless Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Griggs. Mr. Johnson, same question.
Yeah, I'll try to save some time so we can get through the rest of them. So I think that this is an area of the budget where we spend money on permanent supportive housing and supporting our homeless where we should not be cutting. I do think that this is one of the 40% of the discretionary, the discretionary part of our budget that's not being spent on public safety that we do spend on this. We need to continue to spend it. It's an important thing to do that you have to kind of consistently lean in on for years and years, and you can't ever let up on. So I do believe that we are doing well, but we have to continue to focus on this and try even harder to eliminate this scourge.
Thank you. Next audience question. Can you talk about how we can make Dallas more walkable? Please address how the scooters are now dangerous to walkers on the sidewalk. I think that's how Mr. Leppert got here, as he came up on his scooter. But the valet took it, right? So fantastic. Mr. Johnson, we'll start with you.
So I had to overcome some people in the eastern part of our city who fought tooth and nail against a community-driven, community-led effort to redesign one of the most dangerous intersections for pedestrians and cyclists and everyone, really, even drivers, in Dallas. The 3G intersection where Gaston and Grand and Garland Road all intersect. I championed and spearheaded an effort that the community was the one that was behind to have TxDOT come in and pick up, frankly, the freight for the city of Dallas to get that intersection overhauled. That's what we have to do everywhere. We have to figure out all the different levels of government where we're leaving resources on the table, where if you had someone who had good relationships with other levels of government and knew how to bring people together and how to talk to people, how to be persuasive and get people to do things that are for the betterment of our community, we could do 3G type projects all over the city in terms of helping make places where you really can't bike or walk right now that were designed when we were really focused on car traffic better for our pedestrians and cyclists in the city.
Mr. Griggs.
Yes, we need to continue the Complete Streets program at the City of Dallas and the principles of new urbanism. They're going to help make walkable areas work in the City of Dallas. Wider sidewalks. Whenever development comes in and we're going to rebuild sidewalks, let's build them wider so there's room to walk. Other things that we need to do, I would say Complete Streets. First one that was done was in District 1 near Bishop Arts. I'm a huge champion of it. Also, we need more physically separated bike lanes and separated bicycle facilities. We put in some of the first ones in Oak Cliff, and we have them downtown. To handle scooters downtown, because I walk around downtown often, you can be walking there, and a scooter comes by you at 15 miles per hour on the sidewalk, and you feel like you're an inch away from getting really hurt. And so on that, we need to continue the bicycle lanes in downtown Dallas and encourage the scooters to use bicycle lanes so they're not competing with cars, because when a car and a scooter have a collision, the scooter loses, and when a scooter and a person has a collision, the person really loses. So we need to create the space for scooters in our city, and that's going to be to emphasize and even move faster on our Complete Streets program to set up those lanes in our urban areas.
Gentlemen, thank you. It is now time for your closing remarks. Each of you have 60 seconds. We started with Mr. Griggs. We'll begin with Mr. Johnson for closing remarks.
Well, again, I want to thank everyone for being here and for listening so attentively. My name is Eric Johnson, and I want to be your mayor, but I want to be your mayor for a very, very specific reason. I believe that our city has real priorities that need to be accomplished, but I understand that they will not get accomplished by just hoping and wishing. It takes leadership. And leadership's a real thing. And in this country, I think we used to have a deeper appreciation for it. I think we used to understand that social progress, economic progress, doesn't happen just for wanting it. You have to have people in place in government, democratically elected government, that can actually build the teams that are necessary to move initiatives forward. And I've demonstrated over 10 years that I've been able to do that in an environment that was not set up for me to succeed on your behalf. I was able to succeed on your behalf. If I can do it in a body of 150 where I need 76 votes, I can do it in a body of 15 where over half of them have already said they want me to work with them. So that's the situation we're in, and I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Mr. Griggs.
I'm Scott Griggs, and I'm running to be your next mayor because I'm a lifelong Dallasite, and I love this city. And I know what we need to do on day one, and I'm ready to do it. I've got the track record and experience of getting things done at City Hall. On day one, I'm ready to tackle public safety and deal with this public safety crisis and restore the culture of safety in the city of Dallas. On day one, I'm ready to address housing, further implementing the comprehensive housing policy to build those 20,000 units of affordable housing that we need today to keep Dallas affordable. On day one, I'm ready to scrub the budget as I've done in the past and find money that we can reallocate. On day one, I'm ready to grow Southern Dallas by taking on areas of concentrated poverty as well as investing in our opportunity zones, which are going to be great growth for the next 10 years. And that is going to mean that we are going to get the tax relief that we all want as homeowners. And on day one, I'm ready to take care of our transportation challenges that are meeting the city of Dallas. On each of these items, I've got a plan to move forward with it. I invite you to go visit griggsfordallas.com. Please pick up my literature or go to my website. I give out my cell phone number to everyone. I would welcome the chance to talk to you more and to earn your support. This is a once-in-generation opportunity for the city of Dallas to go a new direction where we will prioritize the basics and make Dallas more livable. Thank you for your attention this afternoon.
Please help me thank our two candidates for mayor, Representative Eric Johnson and Councilmember Scott Griggs. I do want to take a moment and thank our sponsors today, Ken Malcolmson and Jeff Kittner with the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce, of course our hosts, the Communities Foundation of Texas, the League of Women Voters, the Mayor's Star Council, the North Texas GLBT Chamber, the Oak Cliff Chamber, Teach for America, and the Dallas Breakfast Group. What a fantastic group who's come together to put today's event on. Yeah, absolutely. I want to remind you that early voting is already underway. Of course, the closest voting stops are Our Redeemer Lutheran Church right on Park, or of course the Preston Royal Library, not too far away. And Election Day is June 8th. On behalf of all of our hosts in the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce and Communities Foundation of Texas, my name is Creighton Webb, and I just want to thank you all for coming today and make sure that you vote. Have a great day.